الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجبين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذريته ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته وانتهج نهجه إلى يوم الدين. تركنا المحجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. وبعد. So alhamdulillah, we continue to wind down bittersweet moments towards the end of this blessed month, very unique Ramadan, one that will probably be counted as amongst the most unique Ramadans for anyone who has lived up to this point in their particular lifetime with the pandemic. And hopefully, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was not just a unique Ramadan, but also a very beneficial, continues to be a very beneficial Ramadan. Ramadan in general is supposed to be a reset for the spirit. And in addition to that, the pandemic and the quarantining and the lockdown also provided sort of a reset from the hustle and bustle and the comings and goings that we collective as humanity have grown accustomed to. And perhaps it's allowed us some space, some time to reconsider what is important in life and what we need to focus on as our days move ahead and our nights come upon us. So we're into the 28th night of Ramadan. So only a few short nights. We still encourage to seek out Laylatul Qadr, the night of great worth, of great value. التي هو خير من ألف شهر, that is better than 1,000 nights like it. And this immense treasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put before us and has bequeathed us the opportunity to avail ourselves of it should not go unnoticed and should not go unrequited. We should do our best to try to avail ourselves, even if it's a few rak'ahs, even if you're laying in your bed in the middle of the night and you're too tired to get up. Just do some dhikr, say La ilaha illallah, give salat on the Prophet ﷺ, and inshallah it will count for you bidhnillahi ta'ala. So on this 28th blessed night, as we're entering into, some of you are already entered into it, some of us are yet to enter. We're looking at the 28th juz, and we'll be looking at Surat As-Saf in the 28th juz, and that corresponds to the 60th surah or chapter in the Quran in terms of the order. وهو عند قوله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لم تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. So many of these surahs now that we're going to come upon here in this particular juz are Medinian. They were revealed during the time of Medina, and many of them then have particular asbab nuzul relating to the Medinian period. And we know that the Medinian period was one that was characterized by the formation of the nascent Muslim community with the Prophet ﷺ as its head and as its guide and as its spiritual leader and as well as political leader and as its murabbi. And Muslims were also involved in much of that time, specifically in the beginning, before the Sulh of Hudaybiyah, of defending themselves. And there were numerous excursions or incursions, I should say, from the Quraysh who were looking to instigate and they were looking to fight pitched battles with the Muslims to try to basically end this mission of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, such as Al-Habad in Badr was an attempt, and later Uhud, and then later when they assembled a very strong Confederate army and were pitched and lay outside of Medina and laid siege to it. Ghazwat al-Khandaq, the Battle of the Trench, or sometimes referred to as after strong sandstorm weather came to them, obviously sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we also see the appearance of, in Medina, the munafiqun, right? And the munafiqun are the hypocrites, and they are munafiqu al-aqidah, right? Versus munafiqu al-amal. So munafiqu al-aqidah are those who outwardly profess Islam, but inwardly don't have any interest in Islam and belief, and they're only doing so to somehow acquire some tangible benefit. It kind of was more advantageous to be a believer in the Prophet's Medina of the time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why we didn't have any munafiqeen in Mecca, because there was no advantage to that. It was quite the opposite. So some of these verses kind of touch upon that. So this Surah As-Saf is addressing this to some degree, and it talks about people who keep their word, broke their word, and some who say that they were doing things that they didn't actually do and sought the reward for it. And this is what the first few verses is referring to. سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. And you have several surahs that begin like this, like Surah Al-Jumu'ah and Surah Al-Munafiqun that comes later. Everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the Almighty, the Wise. So this tasbih, sometimes you see it in the Quran, سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُمْ, in another verse. And there's nothing in the universe. And when Allah says the heavens and the earth, He means the heavens and the earth and anything in between. So basically all of creation. So sabbaha here is in the past tense, but it means that it's an ongoing, continuous thing. Sabbaha, yani, when you see it in the past tense and it means something that's ongoing, it's for emphasis, right? It's thabit, it's confirmed. Sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawat. Here, ma ghayr al-uqala, as they say. So the ma means everything, not just those things that are sentient, but those things that are non-sentient. What's non-sentient? The trees, the rocks, the mountains, and so forth. Ma fi samawati wal ard. The ocean, the river, the bodies of water, the underground rocks, and movements of lava in the volcanoes. This all comes under ma. So sabbaha, and here the translator said everything in the heavens and earth glorifies God. وهو العزيز الحكيم. How do these things glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does glorification mean? Tasbih, they say, هي كلمة تنزيه. So glorification means to remove anything that can at all be construed to be other than glorious from our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's to be kind of in sort of complete submission intellectually and spiritually to the idea that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sovereign and the Rabb and the Ilah and the Lord over all things. And as such, there's nothing from the naqais. There's nothing that we can see as a shortcoming or detraction to the sovereignty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is tasbih. So everything in the heavens and earth does that. And as we said in the previous verse, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِيحَهُم, but you don't always understand their tasbih, right? So whether we believe that the tasbih happens by a way of fitrah, that is a primordial state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts into these things, including the animals and other creatures besides human beings, and they do as they're supposed to, they do as they are, they know, they're not taught things, right? We've mentioned before, the salmon that knows how to swim upstream to go and lay its eggs, the sea turtles that come to the shore in the Indian Ocean, for example, and lay their eggs on the beach and bury them and then leave. And then how do they know to do that? Or the migratory birds that some of them fly 10,000 miles and migrate from one place to the next. The whales in the ocean and the sharks and so forth. All these things, they do this, and then their young are born and they do the same thing. And so it's not necessarily a learned behavior, but it's a fitra, right, that is put into them. It's a primordial state. Allah teaches them. Right? He is the one who gives the meaning, the fitra to the samawat, to the heavens and the earth. And even the celestial orbits and the planets and the moon and the sun. All of these things make tasbih for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the same word is used for celestial orbits. It's a type of sibaha, right? The way that they move around, and tasbih is to glorify that. So whether we believe that's a fitra without these things being cognizantly aware of it, or as some of the ulama said, like Shaykh al-Akbar Ibn Arabi al-Hatimi, he said that animals are aware of their tasbih. They know they're making tasbih for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't know how to communicate it to us. We can't understand their language, right? And that's why we find in the Quran some of the prophets did speak to the animals, like the hudhud, right? The hudhud bird that spoke to Sulaiman, and Sulaiman spoke to it, and he told him, he assigned him things to do, and if you don't do it, then you're going to face punishment. And the animals that spoke to the Prophet ﷺ, the camel that complained about its owner and that the abuse it suffered from its owner, and the Prophet ﷺ understood. Or the very palm tree stump that we mentioned before, that is not even an animal, that was not even alive, right? It was plucked from its roots, but it had life to it because it was served as the mimbar, the pulpit of our Prophet ﷺ, and it yelled, and it let out a scream that even the Sahaba heard when the Prophet ﷺ took a new mimbar, and he calmed it down. So all of these things make tasbih. This is all glorifying of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From the seen realm, obviously, alim al-shahada, that we are in, and even within alim al-shahada, it's seen, but we can't perceive everything about it. And then from alim al-ghayb, that which we certainly can't perceive anything about it because it's from the ghayb, it's from the unseen realm. And here we're talking about the angels, and we're talking about the believers amongst the jinn, and we're talking about al-arwah al-mutlaqa, those that have passed on, that Allah gives them some sort of life in the hayat al-barzakh, right, in the in-between life. All these things are making tasbih for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لِمَ تَقُولُونَ مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ كَبَرَ مَقْتًا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَن تَقُولُوا مَا لَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Oh, you believe, why do you say things and then do not do them? It is most hateful to God that you say things and then do not do them. And I said there was like a sabab nuzul, some sort of situation that arose for this particular verse, even though the meaning is general, that some of the people of companions of Medina, they said, oh, if I was around for Badr, I would have went there, but I would have joined the Prophet. So I said them, or some of them may have said that, oh, I was indeed at Badr and they were not at Badr or at Uhud. And so this verse came as a rebuke to them, but also in general. Why do you say things and then do not do them? Right? Why do you or why have you said things that you have not done? Could also be understood that way, even though it's in the mudara, in the present tense. So believers are supposed to speak only that which they have done or they truly intend to do, and not to say that they're going to do something and then not do it. Or some of them understood it, the ulama, many of the ulama understood this to mean, if you are in a position of giving wa'az, admonition, and teaching people, then how could you teach people to do something and teach them about Islam and then you don't actually practice it and do it yourself? And it said that many of them were afraid then to take up teaching positions and so forth because they had this fear that I'm not practicing 100% what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us and what I'm telling the people to do. And then other ulama have said, well, this is true, no one is ever going to be perfect, but this is exactly what the shaitan wants. He wants people to stop not doing anything. So rather than giving up and not, he said, if everyone thought that way, there would be no amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. If everybody thought I can't say anything unless I'm actually doing it myself 100%, then who would say anything to anyone? Because nobody's 100%. So the idea then is to rectify your intention and build your ikhlas, build your sincerity. So the verse is not saying, stop doing things or saying things that you're not going to do, but it's telling you to actually do the things that you're saying. start performing them, and don't seek the cop out or the easy way out. Would be like, okay, I just won't say anything then because I won't do anything. So you will neither be spreading good, you'll not be saying good, nor will you be doing good, and that's exactly what Shaitan wants. So we want to be saying good and also doing the good. So you might be saying good, but make sure that also you put it into practice. Why? كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. Right? It is most hateful, most offensive to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say that which you do not do. And they said this is enough of a reprimand, right, for one to take this extremely seriously. Kabura maqtan, like the greatest, the worst. And very rarely, I'm not sure if this sort of extreme admonition in terms of the language is used elsewhere in the Quran, but it's used here. And we know that the upholding of truth is one of the most essential principles of Islam, and that lying is one of the worst sins. So it's sort of like a lie when you say that you're going to do something, or you're told to do something, and they're under the impression that you're doing it, and then you don't do it. Right? So even some of the ulama, when things were said about them, they didn't say that they did, then they took it upon themselves to do it. Like Imam Abu Hanifa was walking down the street, the great faqih, and someone said, "Oh, there goes Imam Abu Hanifa, the one who prays all night." Right? Yuqimul layl. He spends all of his night in prayer. And he knew about himself, he didn't always do that, or he did some of it, or not all the time. He said, after that, I took it upon myself to spend all of the night in prayer. And it said that Imam Abu Hanifa, that for 40 years, his wudu of Isha was the same as his wudu for Fajr. So he didn't sleep, he didn't have to renew his wudu. And this ostensibly because of what he heard from people attributing to him. And so he wanted to make it haqq, even though he never said it about himself. This was the wara'. This was the scrupulousness of these people. إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. Right, and as we said, this was referring to some of the ghazawat before. That's why the next verse comes in this fashion. God truly loves those who fight in solid lines for His cause, like a well-compacted building. كبنيان مرصوص. البنيان المرصوص, like the way they used to build bricklaying. Right, whether it was like adobe bricks or nowadays we have burnt, cooked bricks, but the one next to the other and one on top, and then it becomes solid. So one by itself is weak, but the way that they're interlaid together makes it a impenetrable wall, or in the case of here, in forming lines in battle, an impenetrable line in battle. So God truly loves those who fight in solid lines. So al-wahda, right, to function as one. As a single unit. So this applies in martial warfare on the actual battlefield, and it also means in terms of how we go about life, that us as a community, as Muslims, we should be like al-Buryan al-Marsus. And the Prophet ﷺ even said that in one of the hadith. He said the believers are like one body, and then he held his hands like this. So that interlay, right? Because if you hold your hands like this, if you try someone to break that from you, they won't be able to do it no matter how strong they are, because it's just the way that it's interlaid, it's nearly impossible to break. And this is how we want to form these lines of Iman, right? And these lines of Islam, and these lines of Ihsan. And you can also interpret it to be you as a single unit. So you have a aql, you have an intellect, you have a nafs, you have an ego, you have a ruh, you have a spirit, you have a sir, you have an innermost being. All those things should be functioning like this, and the one that should be, taking the cues is the qalb, the heart, taking the cues from the best part of you, from your innermost being, from your sir, which takes its cues from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the aql is the one who's going to help to keep you performing in line with that inspiration from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the nafs has no choice but to follow, because it's part of a unit functioning with it. Right, so even if you have a line, a unit in an army, but there's a weak link here and there, but that weak link is not exposed because everyone is together, like al-bunyan al-marsus, right? So it kind of makes up for the weak parts. And so we have weak parts about ourselves. So we want our strongest part, our strongest aspect, that which is in direct connection with the divine, to be the leader, right? And to be the one that impels us to do things, not by our hawa, not by our caprice, not by our ego, but the strongest part about us, that which is in direct connection with the divine. And we can avail ourselves of that by following the commandments of Allah and avoiding the prohibitions, and being satisfied and contented with his decree as it comes down. Then the chapter offers some examples of both, of those who transgressed and those who did not. وإذ قال موسى لقومه يا قوم لم تؤذونني وقد تعلمون أني رسول الله إليكم فلما زاغوا أزاغ الله قلوبهم والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. Moses said to his people, my people, why do you hurt me when you know that I am sent to you by God? When they went astray, God left their hearts to stray. God does not guide rebellious people. Right? Probably no prophet arguably suffered as much with his people, except maybe Noah as well, and obviously Ibrahim also suffered. Many of them suffered at the hands of the very people that they're trying to bring to the deen, that they were giving the da'wah to. And here Musa alayhi salam, numerous miracles were witnessed by the Bani Israel, such as the casting of his staff into a serpent, and they all saw that Yawm az-Zina, right, the grand day that even Pharaoh brought his sorcerers out. And then when he led them out of Egypt across the Red Sea and parted the Red Sea with that same staff, and they crossed, and then the army of Pharaoh and Haman were drowned in the Red Sea. And then when he gets to the other side, the Sinai Peninsula, and he is drawn to Tur Sinai, where God speaks to him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks to him, and he left the people in charge with Harun, his brother, alayhi salam, and then they take a golden calf as an idol and worship it. And even when they were 40 sanatan yatihuna fil ard, the 40 years that they were made to go astray and lost, and before that, there was a group that they had to cross, and Musa alayhi salam told them, we have to do this together, and I need you on my side. And what did they say to him? اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إن هاهنا قاعد. Go, you and your Lord, go fight. We're not going anywhere. إن فيها قوم جبارين. There's a qawm that's jabbar, right? There's a strong, powerful group. We don't want to deal with that. اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا إن هاهنا قاعدون. Go fight you and your Lord against this enemy that we don't have a taste for. هذا ما ذاقه سيدنا موسى عليه السلام. This is what he found. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that with such people, فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم. This is how we understand al-qadr, the decree, when it comes to misguided people. فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا, right? From when they went astray, أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم. Then Allah let their hearts go astray. The verb says أَزَاغَ Allah. Allah led them astray, but He created the act of going astray, and we say that في العلم in Aqidah, because people don't create their own acts, but their hearts went that way. They went that way first. They made the choice. They had the choice. فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا, for when they went astray, أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْفَاسِقِينَ. Right? And Allah is not going to guide those who are corrupt. You have to turn towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an example of one who had followers, at least a few of them, who were strong with him. Who was this? He says, وإذ قال عيسى ابن مريم يا بني إسرائيل إني رسول الله إليكم مصدقا لما بين يدي من التوراة ومبشرا برسول يأتي من بعده اسمه أحمد فلما جاءهم بالبينة قالوا هذا سحر مبين. Jesus, son of Mary, said, children of Israel, I am sent to you by God, confirming the Torah that came before me, and bringing good news of a messenger to follow me, whose name will be Ahmed. Yet when he came to them with clear signs, they said, this is obviously sorcery. So, Isa ibn Maryam, first we notice in this verse, Jesus the son of Mary, he said, Ya Bani Israel. In the verse before this, with قال Musa لقومه, Musa said to his qawm, his people. Was not Isa from Bani Israel? Why did it say, wouldn't say with قال Isa لقومه, to his people? And the Mufassirun said that lineage is established from the paternal line. What was the paternal line of Isa alayhi salam? He doesn't have a paternal line, right? He was created miraculously without father. And so from his maternal line, yes, Maryam bint Imran, she was from Bani Israel, from the tribes of Israel. But since Isa was not from them along his paternal line, he addressed them in a way that he was not from them. With قال Isa, with قال Isa ibn Maryam, Ya Bani Israel, instead of Ya Qawmi. Inni Rasulullah ilaykum. I have been sent as a messenger of God to you. مصدقا لما بين يدي. Right? And I confirm all that of the Torah that came before me. And in other verses, it says also that he comes with something new, Al-Injil. وَلِيُحِلَّ لَكُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي حُرِّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ وَجِئْتُكُمْ بِآيَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونِ. And I have come to make ease for you, and to make that which was previously considered to be illicit or forbidden, because of فَبِظُلْمٍ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طَيِّبَاتٍ أُحِلَّتْ لَهُمْ. As the Quran says also, Quran يفسر بعضه بعضا, and the Quran explains itself. So why were the Sharia difficult? Why did they have the Sabbath? Why were they Ashab as-Sabt? Because of their transience and their rebelliousness against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they had a harder Sharia. And then Isa came to make ease, much in the same way that the Prophet Muhammad also had a similar, and his Sharia was even more facilitated and samah, right, than that of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salam. And so he tells them this, but I confirm that which you come from the Torah. وَمُبَشِّرًا, but also to tell them of a messenger coming after me. The ulama said that all of the messengers did that. Even Adam alayhi salam, beginning with the very first man, he told all of their people, there is a messenger coming after me, his name will be Ahmad. And Ahmad is another name of the Prophet ﷺ as Muhammad. And it's said that he was called Ahmad fi as-sama' wa Muhammadun fil ard, that he was called Ahmad in the heavens, and that he was called Muhammad in the ard, in the terrestrial realm. What's the difference between Ahmad and Muhammad linguistically? We say that Ahmad is what we call ism tafdil. It's a sort of superlative form. So they both come from the word hamd, praise. So someone who is Ahmad, he's the one who praises the best, or praises the most, or knows how to praise the best. Praise whom? Praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what does Muhammad mean? Muhammad means the one who is praised. So the one who's, and then not just praised, because Mahmud would be just praised once, or just praiseworthy. But Muhammad means the one who is praised often, or praised by many, or even better than that, praised by many often, which is the name of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when he gets to the terrestrial realm, he is the one who is praised by many and praised often, because he is the best one who knows how to praise, as was known fi as-sama'. That's why he said, "Rasul ya'ti min ba'dihi ismuhu Ahmad." This prophet was coming after me, his name is Ahmad. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us how to praise. Right? He is the one who said, "La nuhsi thana'an 'alayka anta kama athnayta 'ala nafsik." Said to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we cannot properly praise you. You are to be praised as you have praised yourself. So he was the one who was the most, the best praiser, as it were, if that's a word, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by virtue of this, he then also became the most praised by the most people and the most often. Wallahu a'lam. So why is Isa ibn Maryam the only one mentioned in the Quran who says that there's a messenger coming after me, and it doesn't mention the other messengers, even though we know that to be true? They said because there were no prophets between Isa and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were no other prophets between Jesus and Muhammad. So a span of about 600 years, there were no other prophets that came until Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is the second to last prophet, Isa ibn Maryam. And as we know, as the Quran has told us, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. He was not killed, nor was he crucified, وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ, Surah Al-Ma'idah. It was made to look like that. It appeared as that, and there's various interpretations. We didn't go over those set of verses in our discussions, but the various interpretations is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cast his resemblance upon someone else. Who was that someone else? Could have been the one who betrayed him to begin with, which is very much also the Christian narrative, at least in terms of the betrayal, namely Judas. And he was the one who was actually crucified. And early Christians actually debated this as well. The first 100, 400 years after Christ, before the formation of, the church, this was a hotly debated and contested issue. And the Quran even tells us as much, that they were in ikhtilaf about this issue. But وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ, the haqq to be, he was not crucified nor was he killed, but وَلَكِنْ رَفَعَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ, he was raised to Allah and he never died, and he will be coming back towards the events of the end of time, but he will be coming back as a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the hadith narrations tell us that he will marry and will have children, he will slay the Antichrist, and he will die, and he will be buried in the chamber of the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, because there's a spot reserved for him that's still there, where he will be buried next to our Prophet ﷺ, next to Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma. But yet the Bani Israel at this point also were recalcitrant. فَلَمَّا جَاءَهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ قَالُوا هَذَا سِحْرٌ مُبِينٌ. So there's two interpretations about this. So when he came with the clear signs, they said this is obviously sorcery. This may be referring back to Muhammad ﷺ, or even to Isa ibn Maryam, right? Because Isa ibn Maryam also was given miraculous things. Can yukmih al-abrah, yubri al-akmah. He would cure the leper, and he would give sight to the sighted one, and even by idhnillah, he would turn inanimate things into birds, and he would give those that were dead and bring them back to life. So these were ayat given to Isa alayhi salam, and they said that this is sorcery, much in the same way they said this about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with some of his miracles. So I think there's more to the surah about al-Hawariyun at the end, but I think in the interest of time, I will stop here, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum, jazakum Allah khair. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يسعدكم في جميع أموركم ويبارك لكم, and gives you barakah and madad and nafahat and ease and all that we do and all that you do, and that we come out of this month هذا الشهر, that we are emancipated from the hellfire, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us to Sirat al-Mustaqim and makes us both muhibbeen, lovers of him and our Prophet ﷺ, and mahbubeen, and those loved also by Allah and his Prophet ﷺ. إنه قادر على ذلك وهو ولي ذلك والقادر عليه. الحمد لله رب العالمين.